Hello guys, welcome back. Now today, I'm going to be talking about some NHL trade rumors for January 17th, 2019. Now with the NHL trade deadline looming, the trade market is starting to finally really start to heat up. And today we got big news on guys like Duchene, Simmonds, Zuccarello, and a lot more to discuss in this video. Now, the first big piece of news suggests that Matt Duchene might actually be staying in Ottawa after all. Now, Pierre Dorion has met up with the agent of Matt Duchene, and they've been talking quite a bit. I think their first meeting was yesterday, and throughout the next month, they'll be talking quite a bit about an extension, and of course, about the future of the Ottawa Senators. But Matt Duchene has been a big topic of discussion over the last few weeks. He's been linked to quite a few teams, and of course a lot of teams can use that bona fide second-line center, and if not first-line center on their team. Got people like, or teams like Dallas maybe, teams like Edmonton. There's quite a few teams that could be in the race for a Matt Duchene, and a lot of teams would give up a high price for Matt Duchene. So while Ottawa might want to extend him, I think in the back of their mind, they might want to trade him too. Now, Matt Duchene so far has had a pretty fantastic season. So far, he's played 38 games, getting 20 goals, 25 assists for 45 points. And alongside Mark Stone, those two guys have been absolutely amazing for the Ottawa Senators. So I think it would be respectful for them to keep them both and to try and extend them both. But of course, if they're going to want to trade Matt Duchene, that would get a huge price up on the market. And a lot of teams would fetch a super high price for the likelihood of getting a guy like Matt Duchene. And the same thing definitely goes for a guy like Mark Stone, but I feel like Mark Stone has the better chance of actually staying with Ottawa than a Matt Duchene. With Matt Duchene, he came to the Ottawa Senators because he wanted to get on a contender, and we all know how that worked out. Once he went there, it seemed like the Ottawa Senators just sinked into a hole, and now with Matt Duchene, he has a big decision to make. It's going to be some tough negotiations if they're going to want to extend this next month. With Matt Duchene, he has the possibility of staying, but I think the more likelihood, or the more likely chance is that he actually gets traded, because with Ottawa, they desperately need assets and prospects to build that rebuild, and right now, giving up a guy like Matt Duchene could really accelerate that rebuild for them. But for the Sens fans and the people that want Matt Duchene to stay in Ottawa, this is good news that they are starting to meet up and they are starting to talk, because while we have heard big rumors about Matt Duchene getting traded, there is still a likelihood of him actually staying in Ottawa. Now, the next big rumor is about Derick Brassard and the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Derick Brassard possibly getting traded soon. Now, Derick Brassard has been a topic of debate since he was traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. It never seemed like he really fit well there. It never seemed like the fit was there already. And with Derick Brassard, his stats with the Pittsburgh Penguins really paled in comparison to his stats with the Ottawa Senators. And while it looked decent at the time, it looked like a guy that could really fit in with the Pittsburgh Penguins, so far in his Pittsburgh career, it has not really gone that way. Now, so far this season, Brassard has played 37 games. He's gotten 8 goals, 6 assists for 14 points. And for a guy that has over a point per game, or pretty much half a point per game in his career with the Ottawa Senators, that is really disappointing stats for him. And he was looked at as a guy that could really work as a third-line center for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but offensively, it really hasn't been that way, and they really haven't gelled all too completely. I still think Derick Brassard has a lot of talent, but I think on the right team, he has to realize that. And on the Pittsburgh Penguins, he hasn't really worked that out. So with all of the struggles that he has, it looks like he is really on bet to get traded, and it looks like a real possibility that he'll get traded around the trade deadline. Now, this whole rumor started by Darren Dreger, and he said that Brassard could be potentially traded. He said the expectation is that Brassard will get traded and the Penguins will want a third center back. And that makes sense, because with the Pittsburgh Penguins, they wanted Derick Brassard to be their third line center in that trade. That was the whole point of that trade, and Derick Brassard really didn't work out in that situation and in that criteria for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So them wanting a third line center back, it is kind of ironic, but it does make sense that they would want that. And there's a lot of teams that would give up quite a bit for a guy like Derick Brassard, who has that playoff pedigree and can really step up for them. Now, the big rumor today is that the Columbus Blue Jackets might be the header of the trade talks for Derick Brassard. Aaron Porcelain of The Athletic said that Columbus has held trade talks with the Pittsburgh Penguins and that they are really interested in a guy like him. And with Columbus, that makes sense. They're kind of in need of centers right now, and Derick Brassard, with the Ottawa Senators, he has a great history of performing in the playoffs, and that's something that Columbus desperately needs. Right now, it looks like they will get into the playoffs. Looks like they'll be a pretty smooth road for them. But again, getting past that first round, I think, is what Columbus wants to achieve. And right now, getting a guy like Derick Brassard would also possibly maybe sway Panarin and Bobrovsky to possibly stay with Columbus. But even then, Brassard could be a very solid fit, and I'm honestly not surprised that Columbus wants to go after him. But honestly, I'm not really surprised by these Brassard rumors, because while he's having a pretty off season with the Pittsburgh Penguins, he still has quite a bit of value, possibly as a third-line center. We did hear some rumors about Dallas maybe being in contention, but I didn't hear too much backing on that. But it seems like Columbus Blue Jackets may be the front runner for that, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there's quite a few other teams in the mix for Derick Brassard leading up to that trade deadline. Now, the next big rumor is about the Edmonton Oilers and them possibly being really interested in a guy like Matt Zuccarello. And I'm just going to say this right now, this makes a ton of sense for Edmonton. Now, Elliotte Friedman spilled a big rumor about the Edmonton Oilers and them being possibly linked to a guy like Matt Zuccarello in the 31 Thoughts article, and he said, with their horse, Oscar Klefbom, getting ready to return, the Oilers are looking everywhere for forward help. As I said in my past video, they would prefer to avoid giving up a major young piece for rental. Sounds like they've checked in recently on the recently resurgent Matt Zuccarello, who had 3 assists in the Rangers' 6-2 win over Carolina on Tuesday. So that is a big rumor about Edmonton being possibly linked to Matt Zuccarello. And again, as I said in my video about the Oilers trade rumors, I think this could make a lot of sense for the Edmonton Oilers, and also a lot of sense for the New York Rangers too. And this Edmonton Oilers Matt Zuccarello trade link, I think, makes a lot of sense. As I said in my Edmonton Oilers trade rumors video, I think Matt Zuccarello is a good fit on Edmonton and could really cycle well in that top 6. Now, so far with the New York Rangers, Matt Zuccarello has played 33 games so far this season, getting 7 goals, 14 assists for 21 points. Not bad for a team that is rebuilding and is a little bit of a bottom feeder. And for Matt Zuccarello, Edmonton would be the bigger bet to make the playoffs, and I feel like if he wants to make the playoffs and wants to get far in the playoffs, Edmonton will likely be the place to go. But we have heard a lot about the Matt Zuccarello trade rumors in the last year. We've seen him really get disgruntled with the New York Rangers front office, and of course with the rebuild that the Rangers have been going on, they've shipped out a lot of players, but they have kept Matt Zuccarello up to this point, and we've heard a lot of trade rumors about it, which have gone up to Matt Zuccarello's head, and we have seen reports of him really basically explaining all of that. And with Matt Zuccarello, he is probably one of my favorite players in the New York Rangers. I love that he's from Norway. I love his overall play style, so I feel like he could really work on a team like Edmonton. He would bring a lot of speed, a lot of skill to that top 6, and of course, with Edmonton, that's something that they desperately need. And for the New York Rangers, I think this also makes quite a bit of sense. In the last year, we've seen all the trade rumors with Matt Zuccarello, and it's kind of getting old at this point, but Edmonton has been reported to maybe want to give up a goaltender, maybe want to give up a guy like Puljujärvi, maybe want to give up a first-round pick. So for New York, since they're going on that rebuild, since they're retooling, I feel like getting a guy like Matt Zuccarello could really work for the Edmonton Oilers, and for the New York Rangers if they want to get a first-round pick back, and maybe a guy like Puljujärvi, but that might be a pretty big stretch. Now, the next big rumor involves Michael Ferland, and that he might have a lot of teams interested around him going into the trade deadline. Now, we've seen that Michael Ferland has been a kind of a sour spot for the Carolina Hurricanes. It doesn't seem like he's mixed very well, and the same thing goes for Dougie Hamilton. But Michael Ferland seems like the more big bet to get traded, and right now, it looks like a lot of teams are interested, and I mean a lot of teams. Now, another tidbit from Elliotte Friedman and the 31 podcast, he talked about Michael Ferland and the teams that might be interested in him, and he said that the Boston Bruins, the Edmonton Oilers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Vancouver Canucks are most of the teams that are in on Michael Ferland. Of course, of the Carolina Hurricanes, he's had an interesting season up to this point, but he also says the list is longer. So, while those are 4 teams that are mentioned, there might be a ton of teams in for Michael Ferland, a guy that could score on the first line, could maybe get some impact playmaking going. And with Michael Ferland, he hasn't been the best fit with Carolina up to this point, and could benefit a lot of teams, especially a team like Edmonton and maybe even Vancouver going into the future. A few weeks ago, we saw the rumor that Carolina was looking for a first-round pick for Michael Ferland, so the asking price might be a little bit high for Michael Ferland, and that might be a reason why he isn't traded. But again, I feel like some teams might get desperate and might get needy, and for a guy that could score on the first line, I feel like that's a thing that a lot of teams need going into the trade deadline, and a lot of teams will want to fix. In Carolina, of course, it hasn't been the greatest fit so far, and Michael Ferland could be the answer for quite a few teams involved. But again, for Carolina, that is pretty solid news that all of these teams are interested. Again, those are 4 teams that I could definitely see Ferland going to, but if more teams are involved, it could be a pretty big race to get a guy like Michael Ferland. Now, the next big rumor involves Wayne Simmonds, and he's been a guy that has been really involved in the trade rumors in the last couple of weeks. He's been a guy that has been speculated about a ton of teams, and he could be available for sure. But this latest rumor suggests that he might not be available, and Philly might just keep him. Now, once again, Elliotte Friedman was on top of this, but it seems like teams are less interested in Wayne Simmonds than they were before. Now, Elliotte says, I think one of the things that happened overall, though, is that there's so many players on the market. We are seeing a situation where more teams than in recent memory have said, we're giving up on this year, so we're making players available. But I think that's flooded the market and made it a buyer's market. But I do think teams like Simmonds. Now, Darren Dreger also chimed into this rumor and says that the Flyers have not fully committed to trading Wayne Simmonds yet. And that's a big rumor for a guy that was seeming like he was almost traded a week ago. And with Wayne Simmonds, he was a guy that almost was a perfect rental for some teams. He could really fit on quite a few teams, but again, with this market, we've seen quite a few teams kind of pull back, as Freeman says, and say, hey, we are full sellers. And that's opened up quite a few players to being available. Teams from the New York Rangers, like Matt Zuccarello, as we already mentioned, but with Wayne Simmonds, he's a solid winger, but he hasn't had the greatest season up to this point, and some teams may be saying, oh, there's more valuable players in the market that we could go after, and Wayne Simmonds might just be left behind. And with this Darren Dreger report that the Flyers might not be fully committed to trading Simmonds, that can mean that Simmonds might just stay on the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, if teams are less interested and the Flyers are not fully committed, that might just mean by the trade deadline and after the trade deadline, we might see Wayne Simmonds stay on the Philadelphia Flyers. And that's that would be very interesting for a guy that was seeming to be trade bait throughout the whole season so far. And with the Philadelphia Flyers, they've been a pretty lousy team. They haven't had the greatest record. So obviously, I think they would be in their best interest to get rid of a guy like Wayne Simmonds, but at the same time, the interest just might not be there. Now, the last 2 rumors I'm going to talk about surround the Toronto Maple Leafs and their whole situation. Now, the first one is surrounding their first-round pick and what they'll actually do with it. Now, this latest rumor suggests that the Toronto Maple Leafs might be interested in trading for rental players. Now, the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, of course, Kyle Dubas, has said kind of multiple times this season that they're not really interested in trading their first-round pick. But, of course, with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they've been like 3-5 since Christmas Day, and they've been kind of sliding. They've been a little bit inconsistent, and they haven't been playing the best. So, while Kyle Dubas might be saying that, hey, we're not interested in rentals, that might change over the next couple of weeks, especially with the mindset in Toronto when they start to slide and when they start to keep piling on those losses. Now, the next rumor about the Toronto Maple Leafs might suggest that they are open to trading guys like Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Johnsson. Now, Bob McKenzie reported that both Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Johnsson might be available if the right trade comes back and the right pieces come back. And as I said before, I think their first-round pick might be in play. And if they want to go after a great defenseman in the trade deadline, especially a rental, they're going to have to give up guys like Kasperi Kapanen, maybe Andreas Johnsson, and especially that first-round pick. So, with the Toronto Maple Leafs, while I'm not sure if they'll go after that huge move, I think as the losses continue to pile on, as they can continue to be inconsistent, I feel like that mindset will change, and we might see Toronto in the mix for a few fantastic defensemen leading up to the trade deadline. And that's something that I've been kind of worrying about with the Toronto Maple Leafs, is that even though they've had a solid season up to this point, these losses are starting to finally pile on for them. And a defenseman that could really shut it down and really bring some offense as well, I think is something that they desperately need. Guys like Gardner, guys like Orjiganov, guys like Hainsey especially, sometimes they are just not it defensively. And I feel like a guy, maybe like a Radko Gudas, maybe like an Alex Edler, I think that they could definitely use a lot of help in that blue line. And if they want to get past the first round, if they want to get past the second round, if they want to get past the third round, I think it would be wise for them to get a defenseman in the trade deadline, because with that current defense, it's just not good enough to get them anywhere. So while it kind of sucks that guys like Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Johnsson might be traded to help that defensive cause, I think it's something that the Toronto Maple Leafs need to look at, especially if they want to shore up that defensive blue line, because right now it's just not getting it done during this inconsistency, during the losses that they are piling up. We've seen the defense be pretty bad, and a lot of guys have kind of get exposed. So I feel like in the best interest of the Toronto Maple Leafs, giving up a guy like Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Johnsson, while it might be painful, giving them up for a defenseman might be in their best interest. But again, the trade rumors for today are starting to really heat up. Over the last week, we've seen a lot of players become available and a lot of rumors start to come out. So while we lead up to the trade deadline, I'll start to make a lot more trade rumor videos because there's going to be a lot to talk about leading up to the deadline, and this deadline could see a lot of fantastic players getting traded. But of course, with this video, I want to hear your guys' thoughts, so let me know down below in the comments, what do you think about the new rumors of today, of January 17th, 2019? Do you think guys like Simmonds, Zuccarello, Duchene will get moved? And of course, what do you think about the rumors that I talked about in this video? But if you guys want some more Grav videos, you can click on this playlist to watch all of my NHL trade rumor videos. But that is going for it, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. And comment down below your thoughts on the trade rumors of January 17th, 2019. And I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.